folks. This is Showcase, and today we have a special guest. If you've been on our YouTube channel, he's on there 12 times already. He's on there 11. This will be his 12th event with us. Some are long, some are short. So grab him on the YouTube if you want to know more about Bryan Kelley. So Bryan's subject last Tuesday, was communication. Today, he's going to take a deep dive into trust, how you give that and how you get it back, coming back to you. So trust is a lot of different things, and Bryan's going to take us to the promised land. And when he asks a question, folks, hey, engage, because that's how you learn more. So let's do this. Let's go around the virtual room here. And I know Blake was not here last time. So Blake, would you introduce yourself and tell us your name and how long you've been doing opening your business? How long you've been in it?
Blake Allen, and been in business 3 years.
3 years. All right. Very good. Okay. And Emily, I know you've been around this business a while, so give us your details.
Emily Sundstrom, and I have worked for Bryan for probably the better part of 17 years, I think. 17 to 20, somewhere in there. So, yeah.
Just a little time.
Only a couple years.
Okay.
Seems like just yesterday.
Yeah. They go fast, don't they?
They do.
You know, hey, it's good to put a face to the name there, Emily. We've chatted in the past.
Good to see you.
You as well.
Yeah. So Bryan, give us a little bit. Bryan Kelley, my voice has just left. So Bryan Kelley, you're on.
Yeah. Oh golly. So I've been coaching now. It'll be 5 years in February. Love it. So I got my first exposure to working with shop owners when we started Mudlick Mel way back in the day, and just fell in love with it. Got lucky, ran into Gary, and it's like, man, give me some of the secrets, man. How do you do this deal? So here I am.
Oh, very good. And that's our troop for today. A little bit of background on me. I've been doing this over 40 years. I don't know what happened to my voice. Over 40 years, and that's probably why I'm talking like this. And man, I've met so many successful shop owners, and I've met so many that are trying to be successful. And to me, the fun part of helping a shop owner is see them become something that they dreamed of doing and being. And that transformation is the fun part. So I'm here to have Bryan Kelley tell us his story and how he kind of got where he is today and what he does about trust and self-led teams and just all kinds of neat things that package together. So listen up. Bryan Kelley, you are on the air.
Man, thank you, Gary. I appreciate it. You know, before we jumped in here, Gary asked me a question. He said, what comes first? And is it communication or is it trust? And I said, if you can't communicate trust, it's going to be very difficult. And I think about last week or 2 weeks ago. No, last week we talked about communication, and we went into the mental aspects of communication. What happens before you talk, right? And what's going through your head? Why do you say what you say? And so when it comes to communication, it's not what you say, it's what people felt. And I think about that every time I open my mouth. It's, oh gosh. And a lot of times I'll even do a check-in to say, hey, what did you hear? And oftentimes what people repeat back to me is nothing about what I said. It's about what they felt from what I said. And just something to think about when you get into communication. I mention that because if you're making people feel a certain way, and that is, of course, I'm not going to say we can make people feel one way or another. I'm going to say that if we're putting words out there that affect the response and the perception of others is probably a much better way to state it. But how do they learn to trust? What do they see? What clues am I giving them about who I am, about what I represent, about what my vision is? And that's kind of my bridge into trust, because when it comes to a self-led team, if you can't communicate, number one, it's going to be really hard for those people to know what the expectation is, where to go, how to do, how did we do? And then the second piece is, if I can't communicate, we aren't going to build trust for that self-led team. And if there is no trust on the personal or large scale, the whole team, or the individual of the team, or the trust between each other, it's going to be really hard to have them lead themselves without me being present in the environment. So it all begins with communication and trust. So like I said, Gary, got to be communication first, and then we're going to jump into trust. So the question I ask people, and it's a really, really simple question, right? What is trust? And I'm curious around this room, even, what trust means to you. So I'm gonna open it with that. I'm curious to hear.
Trust on my part would be, I don't, I trust a lot of people or a lot of things until they don't turn out the way that you anticipated. And that trust kind of leaves a little bit as long as we've given them the right direction. The trust is coming from that, and they trust that they do that. And, it's life is good when you trust people. And if you don't trust people, life can be ugly.
Yeah, so I heard you say, and tell me if this is what you meant. You trust a lot of people until. And in that, I would hear that perhaps trust is earned or trust is diminished.
A trusting person until I see them falter. Okay.
The results, right? So you may
Yeah, the
give
results.
trust, you may
Right.
give trust, but then you may diminish that trust, or you may even look to earn
Right.
trust, right?
Yeah, you sure can.
I think once you
Yeah.
put it out there, you're vulnerable when you trust somebody, right? And when they don't honor that, then it's already too late because you've been burned, I feel. So it's of course,
Yeah.
now you learned your lesson. Yeah, that's a good question though, Brian. To me, it's just, your feelings when you have trust, your feelings are that they're gonna do right by you, and you know, do what they say they're gonna do, things of that nature.
I think it's an expectation of honesty or integrity, reliability of a person. It is an expectation that you can count on them for certain things or that you have that confidence in them until it is broken or it is mistreated or mishandled.
Okay, interesting. So you're in kind of that same vein as Gary. I'm hearing a theme showing up here, which is not shocking, but we trust until, right?
Mhm.
Trust is given until, and it's that's an interesting perspective. I'm curious to hear if there's anything else maybe. And Micah, just so you know, just coming in, I asked a
Hey, Micah.
super simple question. What is trust? Super simple. Tongue in cheek.
I'm thinking.
But I think that it's all of our experiences, though, that would lead us to trust or not trust. Like when you're born, you don't know the difference, but you learn that based off of those experiences or those situations that you're put in. So trust for me is going to be completely different than what it is for you, Brian. Just going to throw that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll jump into that too. That's a if you have a traumatic if you've had trauma in your life, which we all have at some level, right? That will affect perhaps the way you investigate trust, right? And there may be some challenges I'll throw out here in a few minutes, but that's a really good point, Emily. You know, if you have had traumatic periods of life, whatever level that might be, that will undoubtedly affect your, I'm not going to say ability, I'm going to say willingness to trust, right?
Mhm.
I'll throw one more thing in the ring. Are there levels of trust?
There's a good question, right?
I remember when I was running a company, my boss would tell me, it's not your job to trust, it's your job to verify.
Mhm.
So what is he essentially? What did he say there?
He's saying don't get caught, you know, with your guard down. You know, you can't be vulnerable and just trust that things are happening that maybe you put into play. You actually have to take those steps and inspect what you expect is happening. You know, you go into a shop, you count the drawer. Uh, and so it's just the way I was kind of brought up in the business world. And, you know, and I can tell you, some of it, because it's different circumstances with different folks and I had a lot of employees. I've been burned because I trusted somebody, you
Mhm.
know, and boy, would I have been a little bit better off if I would have been leaning more toward the let me verify side.
Okay.
I think
Anything else?
trust is a feeling, and those feelings are all built um, to me, it's a feeling. So whether I trust him or not, it's how I feel about it. But it's all based on previous experiences. Whether of how will I trust him or what level of trust do I put in him?
Based on previous exchanges. Okay. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I've got, so like you're asking, what is trust? Trust in itself would be the belief that reality is going to match expectation.
Mhm.
And,
I like this.
our level of trust, again, dependent on what has happened. But if we don't set expectations, you're going to have a flawed level of trust in that.
Yeah. Kind of back to the trust but verify. There's something that corresponds in that one. I like that. Yeah. Thank you, Blake. That's yeah, kind of hit you're hitting the intent of the question. You're circling right over the target. And I like that what is trust, right? And to expand on that a little bit further, I might say, why do we give trust, right? What is the purpose of giving trust? So if you think about that for a minute, do I give trust multiple times per day and not even realize I've given trust? I mean, I'll go with the most basic example in the world. Do you hop in your car and drive somewhere every day?
Yep.
Are you trusting that the majority of the people on the road are going to obey we'll call them the laws that will stop them from
Standard
absolutely wiping
operating procedures.
standard operations, right? They're going to stop at the stop signs. They're going to stop at red lights. Do we place that level of trust? We just walk out and do it.
You still got to look both ways.
You got to pay attention, right? Because
That's right.
there's a lot of people out there that are in between, right? Oh, it's yellow, boom, I'm going, or it's red and I'm going anyway. I mean, I know people who've experienced that, but we couldn't get in our car if we didn't place that trust, right? I've got a good friend, and if she gets into her car and goes to drive down the road and it goes over 40 miles an hour, she'll go into a full-on panic attack. Can't drive on freeways. She can get barely off of the arterial roads in her city. She doesn't trust that she can get the car from A to B. She doesn't trust that something terrible won't happen to her on the way.
Wow.
Pretty extreme example, and that's just driving, right? That's just hopping in my car and turning the ignition on. So if we give trust to those we have never met, and I'll give you another one. Anybody in here flying a plane? Do you believe that the pilot's going to get you A to B without landing in the ocean intentionally
You
or
have
unintentionally?
to.
Trust that he doesn't want to die.
Well, that's you hope, right? I mean, maybe he's on the suicide mission. You don't know, but you give him trust, right? And you haven't walked in that cabin to even meet him. You don't know anything about him.
Right.
So it's interesting. We place these parameters and these I call them guardrails around trust, right? But is any of that real? Does it actually exist? Because we're willing to give trust free rein. I mean, and we're talking about the safety and livelihood of ourselves in a moment's notice. We're willing to turn the key on, drive to the store. We're willing to take that ticket, boop, hop in the plane. So we'll give trust. And maybe you can make the argument. I'm hopping on a plane because I know he's had flight training. I know he's good at what he does. I know that he cares because he's employed by this noble establishment of such and such airlines. Everybody has a bad day though, right? How do we know he's not having a bad day? We trust that he's not. Whether we do it in the cognitive or the subconscious, we're giving trust. So what does that mean for our daily lives? How does that relate to employees? What does that mean? And again, what is the purpose of giving trust? Does anybody know what the purpose of giving trust? Because honestly, if there wasn't a purpose, I would make this assertion. Most people wouldn't choose to give trust, right? Brian, you said it perfectly. You said you're vulnerable when you give trust.
I think when you do give trust, it's empowering to the person that you're giving it to, and they can do the right thing by that or the wrong thing by that. But I think sometimes you do have to. Sometimes you're put in a situation where you must put your trust in someone, and I still feel like there has to be some bit of verification going on there. Maybe it's reviewing a P&L at the end of the month, um, things of that nature. But yeah, that's what you get back out of it. It's that relationship building, when you get trust, and you get it back, right? It goes back and forth.
But
I think
you don't get any of that when you drive your car down the road, right?
No.
That's why I go back to these basic analogies for a minute, just because there's some power in what we're really doing. So Emily, what do you hear?
I was just going to say that I think that sometimes there's even a level of trust that is you give, whether it's your employee, your management, whomever, you give them the trust to make a decision. But part of giving them that trust is knowing that if they do make, whether you want to call it the wrong one or the unexpected one, or they don't get the result that you wanted them to have, you trust that they will come back to you with, hey, here's the end result that I got, but it's not where we wanted to be. Can you trust me again to make that decision for a better result also?
So what was the intention of giving that trust? Back to the question. Why would
Sometimes for them to learn the lesson.
possibly, yeah. But I think there's it's worth sticking here for a minute, because I want to focus on a really critical piece of trust. And I'm going to say that most of us have never went to this depth with it. And not because it doesn't have power, but because perhaps we just haven't thought about what it means to give trust. And if I choose to give trust, there's a vulnerability, there's a weakness, there's potential for failure, right?
Mhm.
So then the question goes back to what in the world would ever do it? And, I asked one time, I said, hey, has the person closest to you ever broken trust? And I had somebody put their hand up and they said, absolutely not. My wife has never broken trust with me. I said, no kidding. man, oh man.
She must be
need
a
to-
saint.
I need to look at this relationship. I'm getting kind of, I'm thinking this is golden, right? I mean, we need pictures of this thing.
Right.
And I asked the next question. I said, so you mean she has fulfilled every commitment she's ever made to you? And eyes like saucers, right? Well, no. Then she's broken trust,
Mhm.
right? The reality is everybody will break trust at some point, right? You know, and I'll go into more of that later. But if I know everybody's going to break trust, why would I give it? What is the purpose of giving trust?
Well, the person that you're trusting, it's gonna, empower them, and it's gonna build confidence for them. And it might be necessary in in the role that they play. It could be completely unavoidable.
So
I
why
mean,
would
if
that
you
matter? Why would that matter to you?
well, if I'm gonna hire a bookkeeper, I gotta trust them that they're gonna do the accounting right, or I'm to become the bookkeeper. If you know what I mean? It's like you got to hand it off,
Okay,
you
so
know.
we're hovering over the target here. This is sounding good. So what are you getting out of it, right?
Time, um, your potential, you could potentially grow into other areas and expand. You got to give up some of the things that are on your plate to do that. You have to trust people to do so.
Yeah, so there's an exchange, right?
That, that's what, and I have to trust somebody so I can do something that I feel is more important and that I need to take care of to be able to lead the company. I got to be able to trust people that I hire to be able to run it for me so I can do other things, whether it's personal in life or whether it's business related. I think trust is there to allows me to do other stuff. I guess the best way, what I feel is more important.
So if I made the statement, trust is an exchange, what do you think about that? Trust is a negotiation. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
That's a leap for me. I'm not connecting to those two things. So
That's okay. That's why I wanted, that's why I open format this, is because I have a tendency to jump ahead sometimes. So I want to make sure we're all on the same page. So if trust is an exchange, what would that mean? What does that look like? I give trust to get something, right?
Freedom.
Possibly, yeah. Freedom's a great one. I mean, Bryan talked about all kinds of stuff that was going on, right? I mean, we're building people, we're getting work done. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that can happen when I give trust, right?
would you exchange results?
I mean, if I'm giving trust, there's something expected, right? So there's a negotiation in trust. And what if we forget about that? What if we forget that there's an actual exchange happening when we give trust? What happens? You know, and what I'm talking about here is that when I give trust, ultimately I'm responsible, right? I've made this negotiation, I've made this agreement, even if it's just with me, right? And I've created an expectation out of that trust, right? What if my communication wasn't clear to begin with, but yet I have this expectation? And I trust that they'll get it done. Or better yet, they should know how to do that. I trust that they'll do it. That's my favorite. It's common sense. Everybody knows that, right? I mean,
Not
who
allowed to
doesn't?
use that phrase anymore.
Who doesn't know how to do? I mean, goodness sake. I mean, I trust that they're going to do this right by my standards. Well, what are your standards?
Expressed or unexpressed?
Well, yes, sir, we'll do it. Okay. Well, you didn't do it right. What does that mean? You know, so then who actually broke the trust? You or them? And then how do you rebuild it, right? Trust
You
is a-
did because you didn't give them the result you wanted.
Yeah, well, but if you don't realize it's a negotiation and you don't realize that you weren't clear, who feels like they've broken trust?
They do.
You think they do, right? You know, and again,
Yep.
so much of this is what's going on up here, right? It's like, oh yeah, they're I don't trust them. They didn't do what I expected. Interesting. Interesting. So if I understand trust is a form of negotiation, a trust is a form of expectation, it would behoove me not to be clear, right? When I'm giving trust. And right now I'm just talking about giving trust. I'm talking about earning trust or working within trust or trust in the team. I mean, there's so many levels to trust. We just go on and on. But I want to get at least a base definition of what is trust. Because if I understand what it is to give it, then I can also understand what it is to get it, right? Is there anybody in here who hasn't had trust broken?
Oh.
Wow, shocker. So we all know what it feels like to have trust broken, right? And I think, Bryan, you talked about levels of trust, right? You know, do you believe there's levels of commitment?
Uh, Interesting question. Uh, I guess in my mind, when I think of commitment, I think it's kind of an all or nothing thing. So I don't know if I could say there's levels to it. If you're committed, you're committed. If you're in, you're in. If you're not, you're out. You know, I don't see, in my mind, at least not yet, where there could be levels to that.
Yeah, commitment's pretty tough, right? I mean, if I said I'm going to do it, you know, and this is my phrase. I always use this one. And, you know, somebody says, hey, I'm going to try to get that done because we know how good a commitment that is, right? My response is really simple. Emily's already laughing. I look at him and I go, you're right. Why don't you try? I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to try and pay you. So we'll see what happens first, right? And you want to see people's ears perk up? All of a sudden that commitment shouldn't sound very good, does it? Well, yeah, I owe you money, but I'm going to try to get you paid. Perks up really fast. So I asked the question, is trust very similar to commitment? So are there levels to trust? And remember, what if we say trust is, and this is one of those concepts that is trust transactional, right? We're giving it to get something. You know, otherwise we're perhaps giving blind trust. Anybody know what blind trust is?
Oh, that's called
Getting
hope.
in the car and go.
What's
Go
that,
ahead.
Micah?
I think getting in the car and driving to the store. That's
I think even that isn't blind trust, because I think that you're still there's road signs, there's cars passing by, there's a lot of indicators, right? That you can say things are happening like they should. You know, if you're I'm gonna say that if you're driving at 3 in the morning, the way you trust is much different than if you're driving at 11 o'clock in the morning.
Mhm.
You know,
I believe there's levels of trust. Okay.
so
Depends
so
on
tell
what you're
me,
trusting them to do or trust them to perform.
but if trust is a negotiation, right? Is there a level to it? I'm trusting that you will do X. I'm trusting that you will accomplish this. I'm trusting that you will. But if I'm just flat trusting you, right? What does that look like?
The word that comes to me is abdication.
Oh, interesting.
You're abdicating what you want done.
Yeah. And you're being clear about it, right? So
Oh.
is there
No, you're abdicating it because you're really not being clear.
well, I'm going the other direction, right? When you're
Oh, okay.
advocating it, you're just giving blind trust. Yeah, they'll just do it. You know, it goes back to they know that's what I expect. But if we're playing in the realm of real trust, we're asking for what we expect, and we're trusting they're going to do it, right? And that's mature. Well, we'll go even a step further. In a sense, that could still be blind trust, because I just assume you're going to do it, right? And I'll go back to this original question, which was, who in here has a person that's close to them who they trust with everything that has never broken trust? It's always a quiet room. I don't get it. You know, I trust you, but
there is
you
one
violated
person
me.
I would say my
Okay.
mother. My mother. That's about it.
So she's never been late to anything.
See, and I
If
was
she
going to say the
was,
opposite, Brian.
you say your dad?
No, I was going to
Oh,
say that sometimes the people the closest to us have broken it the most.
for me, it would be
Yeah.
her. I wouldn't put like being on time, like a trust thing. It wouldn't be like, oh, I trusted you and you didn't make it on time. So it wouldn't violate my trust boundary if someone's late to something. Um,
Well, but if
maybe
you
they got
had,
a flat tire or something.
but if you had to be somewhere and there were people waiting on you and you were late, that'd be a violation of trust, right?
I still wouldn't chalk it up to trust. If even if they made me late, maybe I miss a plane, they were going to take me to the airport because of unforeseen circumstances. I wouldn't hang that personally on them. I might not be real happy, but I
But they
would
broke
go,
a, but they broke a commitment, right? Broken commitments violate trust.
yeah. I mean, I could see that.
But you're still willing to give trust, right?
I think that's where the different levels, different levels come in at
That's
that
your
point.
level. Yeah, because if it's something that happened outside of their control, then I don't feel like I would put it onto their shoulders. Like, hey, you broke my trust. I trusted you. Now here I am having to find another flight. I mean, I've had power go out at the shop, and I wasn't able to finish jobs that we typically would have. So I had to start making phone calls. Hey, our power's out. Maybe tomorrow before your vehicle's complete, type stuff.
It
You
might
know,
also be
circumstantial trust.
You notice one thing I always know, and this is weird too, because I'm in a lot of groups that aren't automotive, and automotive has the most reasons for something not happening and getting completed
I was gonna
out of
say
any
excuses.
other industry I've ever been in the middle of. And I don't know why it is. It's like we train ourselves to be ready. Parts are late. We lost power. Tony got sick. Whatever it is, right? It's so wild. And I think it shows up in other ones, but I almost feel like in our industry we have them rehearsed like to a T. Reminds me of my 8-year-old. As soon as we catch her doing something, man, she's got a 10-minute story about why it happened, and I'm like, did you spend a while rehearsing this? And not even to knock on our industry, right? It's just this is a cut of who we are. We are always prepared when it doesn't go right, almost like we're ready for it not to go right. But I would still challenge you and say that's broken trust, that's broken commitment. Now, that doesn't mean that they're a bad person. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't give them trust. It doesn't mean anything other than they broke a commitment. That's all
So
it means.
then you just have to be careful, on the commitments that you make, right? So, hey, can you give me a ride to the airport? Hey, weather prohibiting, I'll be there, right? As long as my car doesn't break down, I'll be there. You
You're
give
gonna,
yourself a couple of
I'll get your car done as long as the parts show up on time. That's my favorite.
I
As
don't
long
even
as the
give
parts get here
promise
on time.
times. We'll do the best we can. I don't, if everything goes well, we should have it ready today.
We're gonna do everything we can. We're gonna pray, and it might be out of here tomorrow. That's for you. So, but again, so I go back to this, and I'm even kind of ringing this thing a little bit, just because I love this part about trust, right? Brian's willing, and we're talking about your mom, right? There is such a bank that she's built up with you. My gut would tell me that she could make the most obtrusive. I mean, it could be, she could completely leave you flat on your face, and you would know it wasn't intentional. you would know that whatever happened, it wasn't because she intended for it to just blow up and cause that, right? That would be seated back here.
Probably correct. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
then
so-
there's other people who, like one of our employees, she wouldn't trust her mom to be somewhere, and she given her 6 months notice and the date and the time and where it's going to be. She still would be like, she's not going to show up because she's had that trust broken so many times. So maybe for Bryan, it's just been that his mom hasn't broken that trust enough times for it to be a trust issue. His expectation is that she's always going to be there.
So she's made a lot of trust deposits, as Bryan Gillis now always
Yeah.
talk about making an emotional deposit. She put all this in, and she can mess up once or twice, and you're going to forgive or give her grace.
Yeah, and that's Bryan's playbook, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So could that playbook let him down?
Mhm.
And I'm not talking about his relationship with his mom. I want to go external of that. Could that playbook let you down with employees, with teammates,
Mhm.
with close friends?
With the
With your-
boss. Yeah. That
Right.
can happen too. Yeah. I mean, yeah, growing up like that, made me just a very trusting person, and yeah, I paid for that a couple of times before I was like, wait a minute, you know, I trust too. Sometimes you can trust to a fault.
Yeah, I grew up on the other end. I didn't give trust to anybody. I got violent. I mean, my mom, unfortunately, just raging alcoholic. Somebody, I always say on her best day, it was a fifth, and, and she was fairly normal. On the bad day, it was a half-gallon handful of pills.
Mm.
And you had no idea what you were going to be dealing with then. If you were promised to get to T-ball, you better start walking. If you were promised to get to the doctor's appointment, you better see if one of your aunts could get you. So I learned early on you just couldn't trust people, right? So two different perspectives.
Yeah,
What if
yeah.
I said no trust and full trust are equally destructive?
Mhm.
I could see that.
That's interesting. You can have two completely different mindsets on different poles, and they both destroy the same way. Because if I can't give trust, and this is the challenge when you don't give it. If I can't give it, guess what people don't give back to you? Don't get it back. They don't want to continue having exchanges with you because they know that you didn't give them trust. They know that you calculatedly went after everything, or perhaps micromanaged, whatever that might be, but you showed up in an untrustworthy manner for them. On the other side, Bryan says, I trust everybody. They're all saints. They're gonna treat me so good. These guys, he said he was gonna get 27 hours worth of work done today. Man, I love this guy. He's awesome. Why do you leave at lunch? I haven't seen him. Where'd he go? Back to all these customers, their cars would be done. But you know what? I know he'll come through for me. Oh, come to think of it, he did that last week too. So both polls produce a very similar result. And in the side of not trusting, that same technician's like, piss off. I'm not going to get this done for him. He knows I won't. I'm leaving. On the other side, Bryan's guy's like, oh, I can't believe Bryan believed I was going to get that done. Can you believe? I don't have any way to get that done. So what is that? What am I saying in this? I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff here. Has anybody drawn any corollary? I'm curious to see if anybody's hearing anything out of that.
I guess growing up, I'm probably a lot like with Bryan Gillis, as far as with my parents and stuff, and I'm a very trusting person. Probably in work is probably too much in work relationships sometimes. And again, it's all based on, I think, on your growing up, your past experiences of where that trust level is. And again, it's been a fault for me in a lot of stuff. And I'm too trusting, and um yeah, I never thought about it that way.
So you guys have a tendency to give blind trust, right? That's what we call that. That's blind trust. You're just
Mm.
going to do it.
I would say early on in my career, I was like that, but then I did take the approach of trust but verify. And I don't see anything wrong with, like you said, there's expectations, there's this exchange to kind of inspect what you're expecting to have happen. And that also gives, the opportunity to go, hey, great job. The drawer is at $150 like it's supposed to be. But you still kind of set the precedence of every time I come in here, I'm going to count it. That's just kind of what I've had to do over the years. If not, there's that one of these days it's going to be an empty drawer, right? And so it's just, you have to, I believe for me, when it comes especially on the business side, it's trust but verify.
And what if you're verifying all the time? And I'll ask Blake, what you're a shop owner, Blake?
Yeah.
Daniel, are you a shop owner?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Emily, I think you're the only employee in here. So I'm going to use you. You were my second choice if there was another employee in the room. So what would happen if everything you did was in a micromanage? I'm not saying you do this either, Brian. I just want to paint a picture here. What would happen if every expectation that was placed for you was double checked? What would that do to you?
I would start to not trust myself or second guess myself. My confidence goes down because you don't ever believe that I did it right, or you don't believe that I am capable.
So again, right? These are the things that show up in trust. So I want to pull us a little tighter here. And I talked about blind trust, and blind trust is where I just assume these things will happen because I trust you, right? I trust that you will do this. Then maybe you have what we could call, and I don't even know if I've ever termed this before, but expectation trust. I'm going to go back and I'm going to check everything. I'm going to go back and just verify everything in there. I'm also not saying you shouldn't verify. I'm just, there's pulls here as well, but I go back and check everything. There's destruction that happens there. What do you think mature trust looks like? What I would call the highest order of trust. What does mature trust say? And this, Brian, this is what you have described with your mother, mature trust.
Well, that's, I guess, when you don't have to worry, you don't have to verify it. Just sleep good every night. It's all good.
Yeah, but what if there was a specific task that $1 million of net profit is hanging out there for, and you ask your mother, hey, would you do these 5 steps I need done for the next week? Would you ever check in?
I think I would, not necessarily to due to a lack of trust, just as a support type of check-in.
So it doesn't become trust but verify anymore, does it?
It's more of a support.
Yeah, because you feel she's earned it, right?
And you may only do it for the first couple days until you know that habit and that expectation has been built and met.
And there could be a big chunk of things that, you don't even ever inspect, and maybe you just inspect a small portion just to get the overall picture, of, if someone's meeting those expectations that you have,
But did you notice where your mind went? What was the difference between trust but verify and where you went when I talked about your mom?
Yeah. She just, I can't say she's never let me down with her own decisions, but not directly toward me or breaking her word or promise to me.
But I just want to show you what came up for you, because this is when I have trust in a person, I show up and support them. I don't get critical with them. I don't take offense, because I give them the trust. I give them the benefit of the doubt, right? when I'm creating expectations and I'm expecting them to do X and Y and Z, and I verify and I double check, I do it for them, whatever all that might be, right? I'm not supporting them. So mature trust is trusting a person, but knowing, understanding that they're going to break commitment. That's mature trust, right? So what's the difference between the two? Where does that sit? What's the real difference? Because you have blind trust, you're just going to do it. Then you have mature trust, you're going to do it, but I know you're going to drop the ball somewhere. I know you're going to break commitment. So what's the real difference? How does that show up?
Maybe on your approach, the approach to whether it comes across as more or less of a supportive effort, or you're trying to verify something.
Yeah, it shows up for sure. But where does that happen? What's tangible about that? Yeah, you're going to see it for sure there. That's the biggest piece. That's the output side of it. It's in our own head. It's nowhere else. There really are no expectations. There's no building. I either give it or I don't, right?
Mm.
When I give trust, really important things happen because I show up differently. I still know they're going to screw it up. I still know I have to go back and look, right? But it's not about, the intent isn't about verify, verify, verify. The intent becomes support, support, support. Now, you get somebody that continually breaks commitment. If it's an employee, they go into the relocation program, right? I mean, let's be real, right? You
Train,
quite honest.
tolerate, terminate.
Yeah, the 3 T's. Which one do you want? Can we retrain this one? Nope. All right. Am I willing to tolerate it? Nope. Okay. Well, then I guess we terminate. Which one of the 3 T's is it? But I say that because it's not about it. Trust is never about what they do. Trust is never about what they do. It's all about what I think, what I feel, what I'm willing to do, right? So we got about 7 minutes left, and this is the trust on our side as leaders. How do we trust other people? And I said it in the beginning, everything builds off of trust. Obviously, you have to have communication to get to trust, as I talked about as well, but everything builds off of trust. So what does that mean as far as those who work for you and with you? What does it mean to show up in trust? What does it mean to show up in trust?
It's having an expectation, and as long as they fall within that expectation, I can trust them with employee.
Nope.
Like I have an estimator right now that's beginning to learning what we call final billing with the collision side, and I gave him a an SOP on this is how you do it. I want to see him, everyone that rolls through here, that you do, so I can verify it, and then as I know they're improving in their where they should be, then I can start checking one every 5 or one every 10, and then slowly that trust is built up in me as far as being able to trust them that it's going to get done correctly.
Yeah, but what if
So
you just trusted them, right?
I can't.
Trust that they have the intent, right? How different does that
What's
work?
that?
Trust that they
Say
have
that.
the intent.
Correct. I feel they have the intent of doing it, they have the ability. It's just I want to make sure it's done right.
Yeah, so then what you trust them, now you're training the process, right? It's not, and that actually isn't a trust issue.
Okay.
The trust shows up when, and this is again, I'm gonna go back to it's in your own head, right? If I blind trust, When they fail me, I'm upset. When they fail me, I'm offended. It's an internal, all of this is internal. When they don't do what I expect, I feel harmed. When I feel harmed, I react like this. That's the trigger point of trust, right? And that ties directly into what shows up in others trusting you, others giving that trust, right? When I trust your intentions, when I trust that you will keep your commitment at every level possible for you, what I'm verifying is just training. But I trust that you will do everything in your power to do what we just talked about. When I trust that, and it shows up that they didn't do it, I'm actually not upset with them. The first thing I'm going to say is exactly what Bryan said. Do you need support with this? What did I not convey to you? Are you having issues at home? Is there some reason you can't concentrate? Are you just not a good fit for this job? Because I trust that you have the intention of doing. But if it's blind trust and I think you're just going to do it, I can't believe they didn't do it. What were they thinking? Do you know how important that is to the business? Are you aware that this is going to cost us? But it's all here. It has nothing to do with them.
Brian, does this go back to the conversation in your head, to the missing words, the 250 versus the 150 or the 300?
All day long, all day long.
All
It
day
all goes
long,
back.
yeah.
It all goes back to here. And that's the point, right? If I give mature trust, I know you're going to fail me, right? But I'll be curious enough about why you failed me to ask the question. Not be upset that I was violated. Because when it's blind trust, I'm violated. I'm burned. You know, Bryan said it in the beginning. I loved it. He said, yeah, you get burned. Dude, we all get burned every day. It's just what happens. It's part of life. People screw up. We're all broken individuals. And we do things that we regret. And by God, everybody around you is going to do it too. So if I trust they have the right intentions, I may find out they don't. And again, there's that relocation program. Although it's hard to relocate your mom and dad or your brother, your sister. Those are different trust levels, right? But the relocation program only works typically in the employment place. But I can choose to not give trust as well. I can trust to say, I don't trust you. So any other thoughts? Any questions?
I like to chime in. Here, I'm based normally in California. My thing says 3 p.m. Central Time over here in Alaska, where I am right now for a 20 group meeting. It's supposed to be at 10 o'clock. Now it was 9. So I apologize for being half an hour late. I said, another email said 9 o'clock. It's all anyways. I'm here late. I love the talk. Like a thermostat, like everything we do, we have to be able to adjust and understand what the other person's coming from, because there's so many things behind our own thoughts, like you said, on your brains, that you don't even know what you reject or accept, and how you know the other people. So adjusting this trust as a thermostat, so you can little by little get to know more of the person, especially like an employee. That should be, upmost on our mind, to be able to understand, to verify, to see how they operate, because it's hard to see how we operate ourselves. So we think of ourselves one way, and other people gives a different report. So it's pretty interesting. But I think mature trust is the ability to accept and adjust a thermostat without getting too crazy about it. But it's easier said than done.
For We're human beings, you know, but the key is if I'm in mature trust, others will develop it as well. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. It's always my pleasure. I love digging into, it's just a little word. It's trust. Love the opportunity to dig into it and explore. So thank you guys for showing up.
Brian, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Micah. Thank you, Blake.
Thank you all.
Dan.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
And thank you, Emily, too.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
Gary,
everyone.
thank you.
Brian. Thank you, Gary. Emily, and Mike.
This is Bryan Kelley. This is a bonus, folks, that you've listened to this entire series that Bryan has done. First one was on communication and the ins and outs of that. Today it was a deep dive into trust and how that works. And Bryan, my question to you is, how does trust and communication, or communication and trust, fit together? Are they in the same ball that's rolling down the road, or are they separate, or how do they connect?
Gary, thank you. I love that question. And I would tell you that, my personal belief is everything is built off of trust. Everything in our business, everything in our life, everything in relationship. But in order to have trust, I have to be able to communicate. And I have to understand why I communicate and what those guardrails look like. And in order to effectively build trust, I have to be able to use communication. So they go hand in hand. And the more I know about communication, the more I can build trust. The more I build trust, the more I'll seek communication. And they are a ball that bounces back and forth. But I will also say that if we're talking about trust and I can't communicate, it's going to be very difficult to build trust. And that's just the unfortunate piece. And I think I told you about a good friend of mine who every time I talk to him, he'll send me a text that's 18 paragraphs long or 3 paragraphs long with no punctuation, no capital letters, even the I's are small. And I'll read it and not be able to understand a word he said. And yet one of the things he always says to me is, I can't keep employees. Can't imagine why. If you can't have a clear conversation, people don't know what to expect. If I don't trust you, people expect to not be trusted. If I overly trust you, people learn to abuse that trust. It comes down to expectations, setting them, clarifying, and living in them. So trust, communication, expectations, that would be the next thing I'd want to talk about. They all go together.
This is deep, and you made my brain kind of hurt in the middle trying to figure this out. And you posed some very interesting questions and really took a fairly deep dive into it. And I think you had a lot of us really thinking kind of out of the box of where we are, and hopefully we can help us glue ourselves back together with communication and trust, because they go hand in hand.
They're just little words. Trust, communication. But when you actually vet what they mean and the implications that they hold on your life and your business, and ultimately the lives and relationships of others, it's all wrapped up in there.
Yeah. Again, thank you for the last 2 sessions. Hopefully, people that hear this on the backside get tremendous value. And like I said before, there's going to be 13 videos on our YouTube channel with featuring Bryan Kelley. Want to learn more? Go there and listen up. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Bryan, for giving us huge insights into what we need to think of as a leader, or owning a business, or even not even owning the business, but kind of the manager like Emily is of your business. She has to have the same knowledge and the same process. No doubt.
Yeah, no question about it. If you want a team to run without you, you better trust them, and you better be very clear with your communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great day. You have blessed us with your knowledge, sir. Thank you so much.